can actually see. There we go. Go with that. Well, hello. Welcome to the first ever and perhaps many Lensafarian churches. And church spelled Cherch, not for just playfully Lensafarianism. Um, just to do things and tweak things and look at things from a different perspective. So, welcome if you're here live. And this is just kind of a first attempt at this. And I'd like to, if this feels good for myself and feels good for the audience, I'd like to do more of these. So let's start off with the first thing is what are you here for? Lensafarianism. Basically, life is the gift of experience. And Lensafarianism is lens. It's changing the lens and how we look at things and the perspective of how we look at things. And it's based on if we are going to say that life is the adventure, life is the gift of experience, then how do we find that gift? How do we realize it? How do we experience it? And in Lensafarianism, it birthed itself from the good feelings that arise within our experience as a human being. And the focus is to tweak our perspective until we're not looking for the right or wrong, good or bad. We're looking for the most beautiful perspective. That seems to be what is at the end when we use a Lensafarian lens to find perspective, is to find the most beautiful perspective. So today's is going to be the theme that's been coming for me is around ire or anger, ire, and grace. And so that we're going to talk about those elements and then how do we make choices for ourselves. So the first thing I want to do is just take a moment and we're just going to take some silence time, take some breaths, whatever that looks like for you. And what we're doing in this time together is just finding space, finding grace. Do we allow grace? Do we manufacture grace? Do we, whatever it is, find some space in our thoughts to focus our attention on what we're doing now. What are we doing now? We're going to look at something. We're going to look at ideas, and then we're just going to move around those ideas and see what flushes up. And so what you might be looking for as we take just a minute is how do you feel? Like feel into how you feel. Do you feel receptive? Do you feel excited? Do you feel and finding that grace to wherever your attention was before this video started to this event started to like getting in tune with the intention, the attention of what we're up with. And so this is what it is. This is already the practice of Lensafarianism is to go into our senses. How do we feel? Put a little bit of, and then take some space. Take some space up inside the mind to go, okay, whatever, if we've got crazy thoughts going on, we're still working on a project for the day, whatever it is, it's like, okay, let's find that space of grace perhaps, that's going to focus our attention for what we're going to experience next. So whatever it is for you, close your eyes, take some breaths, lay down, whatever feels right for you. Just going to take a minute and find that space. So, welcome to this experience. I hope you found something in your feelings, what you're experiencing, along with the space and attention. I found that my toes are cold. So, but that's what I was looking for, was to check in to see my whole sensory being and where I am and what I'm doing. So I'm doing this live, and where does this come from? Because this is kind of the theme today, is where do our choices come from? And for me, I've been making videos. I've probably made 1,000 videos so far on the Paradigm B channel. And I edit them and I redo them. And so it like is very focused attention. And there's just this element that has kind of bubbled up within me that is like wanting to express authentically, meaning that in the moment, spontaneously having an idea. And that's the weird thing about social media, especially with YouTube. It took me a long time to be able to make a minute video because shorts are what's getting people's attention. So I focused on that. And that has you dialing down and changing the way you think. And it's interesting as we look at these tools that we use to speak to one another and communicate with one another, they will change the way that we think and act in the world. And we have to, if we want to engage with those processes, engage with people and how they are connected to the world, we have to adjust to it. And I have done a lot of adjusting to get my mind to be able to make a 1 minute video for the shorts. And then even in my longer ones, you can hear more just me kind of coming from my own space. But this live event makes it so that that whatever comes out is going to be coming out, and it can be much more authentic. And so talking from that point of view is like what I'm talking about is the choices that I've been making and wanting to kind of move towards, because I've been making these videos for a long time. And then it was like, wait, there's something still missing. And where does the choice for me to make this video and to try this little aspect out, where does it arise? And then what actually got me to do it? And it was soft, but there was something under. It was like there's something missing. There's something missing. There's something missing. And it was like, okay, let's just try it. I'm not completely prepared. I just figured out just the other day that I can actually go live on YouTube, because you need to have 50 subscribers. So thank you very much for people subscribing to this channel. That helps me out. And I recognize that's something else I don't do, is I don't promote my channel very much. And I think that has to do with some of my own not knowing what direction my life is going. And that's probably a whole nother church is deciding, but maybe something will bubble up in this talk. And that's what I also like about the idea, is that I would love to do this as a church and to have other people's perspectives. The thing that I want to do is figure out how I need to kind of outline to get people focused on exactly what Lensafarianism is and what these conversations are about, because they're different than a lot of other channels, especially the very popular channels. And we're going to talk about that first. So, talking about ire, and it comes up from. Oh, let me finish that other thought. First of all, so I would love to have a church, have a session like scheduled in, so that we can meet. I don't know how many times, what that'll look like, but hopefully, depending on how I feel after this, I sit down and scratch something out so it all makes sense. And so just let you know if that could be something to really look forward to. And I know I'm excited about it, because I know that we're all in this together. And this is one of the hardest things that I've had to communicate And that's one of the reasons too, is that I don't want to be the leader of something. It's like, what am I leading? I don't mind leading something, but I don't want to be a guru. And I know that. And I also know that whatever comes through from me is available within this world as well. And so it's not like these are my ideas. Um, they just come through me, and other people's ideas are catalysts to this. Like Lensafarianism wouldn't exist without Chelsea. Well, at least in the experience that we had together, was like, that's it was our experience together and her feedback that 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 arose this whole idea. So this is just a catalyst. And what is my role in the catalyst is what I'm working out myself and figuring out for myself. And then how to communicate that with people, and being um, engaging so people are excited and want to come forward in that. Because if we look at what's popular, and that's what I'm going to talk about first, so this is a nice little segue, and we're going to talk about the news. The news. So I quit the news many years ago, and that was a huge upgrade in my life. And I would highly recommend it. And we're going to talk about a little bit why. But I want to talk about more about why it's important and the interesting part about the news. So if we just take apart the news, it's not new, first of all. So it's an interesting thing. It's basically the same narrative over regurgitated every time. And if you have any if you don't know, that's how I want to have these videos. Some of you have no idea. You've just been watching the news, or you've never watched the news. If you watch the news and you're engaged with the news, you have been given the catalyst of a narrative. And it is obvious to see this narrative that is even the weatherman. The weatherman tells us how to feel about the weather. They will say it's going to be a bad, we're going to have bad weather this weekend. And it's like, it's rain. Why should we consider it bad? Why should we like, why is there somebody telling us how we should feel about something? If it were actual, like, just data given to us, it would have no narrative. Um, it wouldn't tell us how to think about it. It would just be like, okay, it's going to rain this weekend. But it's the interesting thing that we want to know how everybody else is feeling about it. So I played with the news. It really should be called the olds. And that was one little fun thing. But I was thinking about, if we just take the news and we take the S at the end of the news, and it represented slave and slavery. When we put our attention on the news, and that is kind of where we put our attention when we're figuring out life and living in life, we are using that attention and the message that's coming from that message as a relativity point in how we put the world together. And what a lot of people don't recognize is the news is a narrative. It's telling us how we should feel about things. And so basically, if we have that in our life on a regular basis, what it's saying is, I've got to take my ideas and I need to make it relative to whatever you're saying. So regardless, the news could anger you, it could make you happy, you could agree with it, sometimes you can agree with it not. But it is always a relativity point in your adventure in life. So if you're trying to be happy and you are measuring yourself and your story and your narrative against the news, it's always going to be, you have to decide for yourself. Is it lifting you up? Is it making you buoyant? Or is it bringing you down and making you less buoyant and making the things that and bringing the things that you want into your life? So, what does the S in slavery mean? It means we're a slave to the narrative. And, but objectively, and that's, see, this is the thing, is the connotation of a slave. Then it's like, then that brings up like, we don't want slavery, we're against slavery. And that's the ire. So that here comes the ire into that. So it comes right into the idea of slavery. And it's like, we can just look at it from a point of view that if we make this a big part of our lives, we are a slave to the narrative, because we're always going to be emotionally responsive to whatever the news is, whatever the narrative that's being spoken out there is. So just having the idea that it's a narrative, like if you understand that it's a narrative and it's trying to tell you how to feel about the world, that's a huge step. Like, most people don't know. They just think that that's life. And that's kind of what the narrative's doing, is say, listen to us, listen to us, listen to us, and we'll make you safe by giving you the important stuff that you need to know. I mean, literally for the longest time, that was kind of the slogan on every video is, 5 things you need to know, 5 things you need to know. And here's another interesting thing that I thought about the news. It's hilarious that it is a narrative. And when we're encapsulated in that, so that's the slavery, it's mental slavery. When we're encapsulated within that narrative, we don't recognize it. And this was kind of an ironic, funny thing. There have been, over the last like 5 to 10 years, there has been this like a railing against mainstream media was the word that everybody was using. And then what was hilarious about that was that new news channels began to pop up, and their basic narrative is, they have a narrative and they are brainwashing you and you are a slave to it. And then people feel free. They feel awakened that they have this realization. And those news, what they're not awakened to is the fact that those new news channels have a narrative themselves. And how can you tell whether it's a good narrative or a bad narrative? Well, if you know people who subscribe to this railing against the mainstream media, and then I won't name these news programs that have come up that popularize that idea, the people that you talk to are angry. And it's like, when are you finally free? When have you freed yourself from the narrative of other people? Because that's, it's just like you went in from one slavery into the next slavery. But you feel free because you felt like you left the other narrative and you've moved into the right narrative. And I would say a really good, a good sense that if you wanted a different, and maybe anger is the way that you want your narrative to go, and that's fine, but that's not Lensafarianism. Lensafarianism is about enjoying your experience, and anger is not. And separation would not be the most beautiful point of view. So it's interesting, the irony of being a human being is we feel like we're out of the slavery, but we're actually still in the slavery. And so the idea of ire to make decisions, and that's kind of what the narrative of the news does. It's constantly feeding us fear-based things to get angry over, to point our attention at. And that's what people's attention wants to be on, is ire. Like they're looking for a thing to be mad about, to get angry about. And it came up for me. It's interesting because the things that where I put my attention now are more on the spiritual, in the spiritual sense. And even in the spiritual community, there seems to be a reflushing up. There needs to be some piece of corrective device. And not everybody in the spiritual community is angry about it. It's just information. And I take it as information. But this year was, as the New Year's resolutions, come up, there's people that are just love that. It's a fresh start. They're like, I'm going to make this year the greatest year. And then there was a year when that was like, then it was anti New Year's resolutions. And it's like every year seems to have a new meme. I'm just kind of learning that term, meaning the true understanding what a meme is. I think I used it correctly. And this year, what I was seeing popping up in my thing was that the new year is actually supposed to start in spring. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, okay. But there was a lot of ire. That got me thinking about, like, do we always, like, how, when can we stop using ire to make choices? Because that's what's going on. It's like that, like, we have to get mad at the calendar and who wrote the calendar and who put it together. And we need to stay in an angry state in order for that change to happen. That's my question. I'm refusing to do that. Like that's not in my wheelhouse anymore. But it's like, what what can come in? What space can come in for making choices? Can we make choices? A lot of times we are motivated, and this is where I make the distinction. I made this in lots of videos about motivation versus inspiration. Motivation seems to come from like anger and ire. And ire, basically, I used that term and then I looked it up. It means it's like anger pointed towards a specific thing, which is perfect because that seems to be what's happening all the time. Like in the mainstream thinking, they get one piece of information to be angry about, and then you've got the two sides, and it's like, okay, so it's like that's kind of what I think is funny is that when I think of people that wake up and they watch the news all day long, it's like, what do you're prepping yourself to find out where to point your ire for the day because there's going to be something new every day, and my question to those people is that what you want? Do you want to need to make choices from being motivated by anger? And that's what this question is about. And that's why I thought the coolest thing about news and having news as slavery is like once you get rid of the S, then you've got new. And it's like Lensafarianism. It's the new world. It's this new refreshing take. And I even look at myself as where am I coming from? Inspiration, motivation. Is there anything that needs to come from ire, that comes from anger? But it's at a much more subtle, it's in a much more subtle observation of the situation. Like, what am I making a choice out of? Like, it's not about trying to fix the world every day. It can be about, whether I should complain about something or I'm having a hard time coming up with an idea. But it's more, anyway, it's more subtle. So my point is I had this vision, and it kind of comes to this there's a decision that we make when we're in anger. And I think we've all seen videos. We maybe all have had this experience where it's like, is anger going to take over the moment? Is anger, are we going to, because that's the thing about anger is like we can be mad, and some of us have this point where we can recognize our anger and we can be like, okay, I can walk away from this. But then there's this other level of anger where it's like we're saying in a moment the choice I'm going to make, and let's just make it violence. Where anger, we just keep ramping it up until it becomes blinding, and we then are motivated from the anger to see where anger is going to go. And it can be either destructive on somebody else or even destructive on ourselves. But really, what it is it's making a choice. So, what can we do so we can recognize ire and begin to look at, even in the spiritual community, do we have to pick apart everything that comes along that was programmed into us and constantly be in a state of figuring out that, you know, I need to be angry about this? It's like, do you need that? I can tell you that I used uh, 2025 as as just a, here's a time. I mean, the timing was perfect, and all of a sudden, I'm just like, had this idea of being an activator, and it was like, okay, that's okay. 2025, it just became a spot in time to go, okay, this is the overlay that I'm putting my attention on. And I kind of see it like, I actually see it now like, I'm a very visual, physical dreamer or whatever else. Anyway, the I got some new solar panels, and it has this little, it's much smaller, it's like that big. But basically, it's a little target thing. So there's glass on the front, there's a dot in the middle, and then it's separated from the back of the board. So there's a separation between them. And then what ends up happening is the sun hits the dot, and then it will show you by where the shadow lies if I've got the solar panel set up correctly to get the best angle to the sun. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to do with my attention. That's what this is about. Like, Lensafarianism is saying, hey, we're going to look at the world this way. This is the overlay. And so I kind of look at it. It's like, okay, activator. That's what I'm focused on this year, or right now. It may change. That's the beautiful thing, is it can change as, as I look through different perceptions, perspectives, to see how the world works. But what I do know is where my attention goes, it's where I'm going. And so this is the thing that I'm looking at, and I want to keep activator. I'm always like, okay, if I'm making choices in my daily life, if I'm making them in my relationship with Chelsea or family or friends or socially or whatever it is, when my relativity point is always going to be measured to activator. I always want activator to be like, to bring my attention back to going, this is what you want to experience. You want to experience, how can you use this idea of activation in the world to elevate your experience? And so far, it's going great. And Chelsea and I are both enjoying it. And it's very good, too, because it helps us to both pinpoint. So I know where her attention is, where my attention is. So when we have a discussion, we know, like, how are you seeing this in relationship to being an activator? And then we can have, if we're off, it's the same thing. Her and I can dial in, like, oh, okay, you saw it this way. Well, I kind of saw it this way. Okay. And then we figure it out. But at least it's not saying she needs to see it the same way I see it, but at least I understand how she's interpreting what it means to be an activator. So I just had this really, what I felt when I started to see the ire come up in my attention and see it happen out in the world all the time. It happens within me, it happens with everybody. Well, I can't say that. I don't like saying those kind of things, those broad um, perspectives. But it seems to happen. We can see this ire comes up. People get mad at a certain thing. Some people are good at ire across the board. They just know how to be mad at everything. Um, like, what is the thing? What is the aspect before ire, like, lifts us and motivates us to choice? What's the thing that can creep in? What's the thing that can come in? And grace came to me. It's like, I've seen lots of videos where, somebody or news or whatever else, somebody gets riled up and, and then they obviously just take it to the next level and game on, new decisions being made, fists are flying, whatever situation you want to put in that. But there's also those that where you see, like I saw one where it was like it was a road rage kind of thing, and these two guys just got into it, and then it was just like whew, something within both of them drifted in, and my observation was grace came in, and they said this isn't as important as anger told us it to be. And so then Chelsea, so it's like that's the thing. It's like we can start asking ourselves, if we're motivated by anger, are we waking up every day to look out, um, compare our narrative with the other popular narratives? That's the first question to ask. Are we looking for ire? Are we looking to be angry about something? I see I have I've got comments coming in, and I don't have the setup to respond right now, but I will when this is over. Um, but this is, if people like this, I like this. Um, so it's grace. We can we harness grace in that? If we feel like we're being motivated rather than inspired, can we start allowing grace? Can we be like the two guys in the road rage where they're going at it and then they just both like dropped their swords and just went, this isn't worth it. And they both walked away, just like the anger just like dripped right out of them. Can we do this for ourselves as well? Can we let go and go and drop back down and make choices that are coming from a different place, an inspired place, a joyful place, a good feeling place, from a Lensafarian term? So I'm interested in that. And Chelsea and I were talking about this idea of, do we make and create grace, or is grace always available and we allow it? And it just dropped me into the idea of, it could be paradoxical in nature, in some, that we create it, but it's also available. We can also say that everything's available. The anger's available. It just depends on where it is. Just putting our attention on it is a huge thing. It's like, what are we looking for? If what we're doing is we're motivating ourselves by anger, can we put that overlay over and say, hey, I'm looking at it. I want to look to see, am I waking up every day to look for who the villain is? I was thinking about, like, conspiracy theories is another one. I wasn't very interested in. I haven't really gone down a lot of the rabbit holes with conspiracy theories, but I thought about the people that have. And I know that a lot of people that have gone down those, one of the things that I don't think I followed was the anger behind it. And but I'm on the other side, that data shouldn't not allow me to look at things, because it's interesting, because some of the conspiracy theories that people have hung on to for a long time, and I felt compassion for those people that they've held on to this, that kind of knew it was, and it's surfacing up to the surface. And I was like, yeah, I feel that loneliness for that people, but I also was looking at them. Are they were they going to be, did they hold on to it the whole time to be right? Or did they hold on to it just like, hey, I see this? Because that's what I see is like, as as I see how popular the news is, I realize like that is not a good choice for people, like people that want to have fun and enjoy life and have a good experience in life. That is not a good place to put your attention. Um, that it's causing, and so it's like that's one of the things where I have felt lonely. I have been like, and people, no matter how much I say it, it's like, nope, I'm watching the news. I'm watching the news. The news is a part of my life. And it's like, you walk into their house and they've got it blaring every time you're there. And it's like, and then in the next moment, you're saying, I want to be happy. It's like, well, that's a really good place to stay, but it's like I don't need to be right. I don't need to be right about it. I just happen to know that I know the function of narratives and where you put your attention and relativity to the situation. It's going to be very difficult if that's where you're putting your attention and you're measuring your gauge constantly against that. It's going to be hard to be there. So I can say just doing this has been exciting for me. I didn't know how I would feel, especially doing this by myself. I'm realizing as I've seen comments come in and people have joined that it would be great to have people join in this discussion. And I think that the biggest thing for me is figuring out how to kind of set up guidelines so that we know what we're shooting for in it, where we're focusing our attention, so that we make something that is driving to um, the ultimate goal, which is, for me, it's realizing that life is a gift of experience. And if that isn't your thing, I wouldn't want you to be here. Um, you watch the news. That'll help you with that. That was a poke. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, any feedback is always great feedback. And I hope you have the most amazing Lensafarian day. Hip, hip, hooray. All right. Okay. Now I don't even know how to shut this off. Huh. Eh, that's bizarre. So anyway, I'm going to figure out how to turn this off, and then I'm going to say goodbye. I've already said goodbye. There's that. I get what that is. Okay, that was some kind of highlighting thing. Maybe this is what I have to do. Nope. Goodness gracious. Oh, maybe that's it right there.